It's almost like if you made like a Hellraiser movie that was just about the politics of the Cenobites. What if the movie was just the monsters? I can't think of it.
Well, that's Hotel Transylvania.
You're right. That's Hotel Transylvania, yeah.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Hello and welcome to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, the podcast where we attempt to resurrect Universal Studios' failed cinematic universe of monster movies, one pitch at a time. I am your maligned parent host, Dylan Roth.
And I am his damned child, Dalton DeShane.
And together we've been building out the Dark Universe into an ongoing narrative to rival the MCU. And what a journey it's been so far. We are deep into phase 3.
Deep into more than... We're coming up on our next Dark Legion movie.
Yeah.
Pretty soon. What do we have, like 3 pitches left?
Yeah, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
I can't believe it's coming up already.
In between our own canonical installments, however, we've been inviting our favorite storytellers into our office to plumb the depths of the Universal Studios catalog for other properties to potentially remake and fold into our own continuity.
We can't do all the work here. We gotta get some other people involved.
No, could we really call ourselves movie producers if we weren't leeching off of the creativity of other people?
Yes, we need people to pay less than us to do more work.
So today's volunteer, our guest this week, is a comedian and humor writer who has been published by such publications as The Guardian and McSweeney's. But like so many guests on this show, she's also a renowned poster.
Yes.
Please welcome to the Dark Universe, Avery Edison.
Perhaps more infamous to posting than famous at this point, but I'll take it. I'm very grateful. I'm pretty sure you've had previous guests who may consider themselves my enemies or me their enemies. I'm a contentious character in film Twitter.
I don't think so.
I'm very grateful to be granted a platform here.
We ask all of our guests, are you pro Avery Edison before we confirm?
Okay, good.
So don't worry, no enemies here.
I think, Avery, that you're one of the Letterboxd follows that I sometimes use as a reverse barometer for things.
Okay, interesting.
I think that you and I have very different tastes.
Opposite tastes. Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
But that's cool though. Like,
we have a lot of people in our Discord like that too, that always think the opposite things we do. And that's good. And it's going to make for an exciting pitch, I'm sure.
You know what? I don't want to build up expectations too much, but I spent a fair bit of time on my pitch, and I've listened to a lot of the show. I'm not fully caught up. Unfortunately, Fortnite has been bad the past couple of seasons, and that's where I do most of my podcast listening. So I've not been playing the game very much. So I've fallen behind on every single one of my podcasts. So I'm not fully caught up, but I'm pretty familiar with the universe, and I'm pretty confident in my pitch.
Well, that's awesome. We're
really excited. First of all, I was excited to see that you. I discovered. I think you posted something in response to something that Joseph Fink posted. So I was excited to see that you had heard of our show and you'd listened to us.
Yeah, it was Joseph's tweet that you talk about on his episodes. That really great tweet where he says the thing I like about. Are you afraid of the dark universe? Putting out there something you should already be familiar with, and he's just telling you specifically what he likes. It's such a great tweet, and
so cool.
He's a great creative mind and has good taste, and I'm always looking for new podcasts. And at the time, I was really into big walks, which I think is a sign of a mental health crisis. But I was going on a lot of big walks and just putting on the episodes, and they were perfect. It was a perfect amount of time. I'd be walking upon the Liverpool docks and like having to like stop and just wait for a second. Like, you've got the Invisible Man posted behind you. I think I tweeted specifically the Invisible Man episode, the various reveals, the humor. I mean, like I would be walking along saying holy shit to myself at the various twists on the horror canon, which I'm a big horror person, not as much lately, very much in my childhood. My mum was very not neglectful, but perhaps permissive, and hated. If I would ask to watch a Disney movie, she would say, no, that's childish, which, I was a child, mum. but she would stick on a horror movie instead. So this particular film I saw, I mean, it came out in 95, probably aired on TV a few years later. So I would have been maybe 10 years old when it hit.
Young enough to identify with the creepy children.
100%. I was very blonde. My older sister used to say I looked like these freaks. Maybe that's why I picked it. That didn't click until now. Oh no.
Well, I mean, that segues pretty well to often our first question of guests, which is why Village of the Damned? By the way, we're talking about the 1995 John Carpenter remake of the 1960 classic horror film Village of the Damned today.
Yes.
We've buried the lead
well,
here.
You
probably saw the title of the episode. Yes. So what inspired you to select this film as the basis of your pitch today?
Was that, as I said, I watched it when I was very young, and it really, it's not a great movie. I would say the first half hour has some really compelling stuff going.
Yes.
But there are several images that really stuck with me as a traumatized child that I think are really powerful. The things the kids do to the adults or make them do to themselves are pretty nasty. And I will say, rewatching the movie, those images do not live up to what my memory has made them into, which is always the way. But
they're pretty gnarly, though. The woman boiling her arm, is definitely one of the more extreme moments.
Desperately trying to put it back in
when
she's taken out. It's a very Jessica Jones Kilgrave situation where if you're told to do something by these children, it's a compulsion you have to fulfill. And that's genuinely horrifying.
Yeah, it's very Purple Man, or even in the comics after Purple Man, they introduced the Purple Children, which I realized watching this is like, oh yeah, those are just exactly the Village of the Damned kids, basically. Except instead of white hair, they have purple skin.
Over here in school, we studied Day of the Triffids, which is another John Wyndham book because the Village of the Damned is of course based on his Midwich Cuckoos. I think he's one of the great sci-fi writers who treads into horror a little bit. And I'm British, and I wanted to bring something British to the pod. I know you've had films that have stopped over in the UK, but I really wanted to play up to that as well.
This is the first genuine British accent we've had on the show. The rest of them have been me.
And it's not even that genuine. I spent too much time in the States and Canada. It's drifted. I do have what they call the fortnight accent.
Well, as our first British guest, though, I do have to ask you, what do you think of Dylan's British accents?
I can leave the room. It's okay.
You know what? I might end up doing some American accents today, so
okay.
I'll just lay an expectation of kindness towards accents. I think Dylan's is the best British accent I've ever heard.
Wow!
This podcast or any.
We can put that quote on all the promotional materials.
Oh my god, absolutely!
We have the Joseph Fink quote, and then we have you saying Dylan's is the best British accent I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm going to leverage that to get some dialect coaching jobs, I think, on the side.
Yeah.
100. Yeah, you got to get always a side hustle. Always
Absolutely.
a side hustle.
So let's start recapping this because Avery, you told us before we started recording that you have quite a substantial pitch for us today. Which
it's a beefy pitch. It's a big beefy pitch.
We're excited about it, and we know that our fans like that. Our fans have expressed they like the more fleshed out pitches. As much fun as it can sometimes be for us to just completely riff. Sometimes on what if Dave Bautista was Scott Pilgrim, but I think the fans prefer something closer to what we do on the normal episode. So excited to get to that.
And also if they want like good coverage of the movie, they can check out Blank Check's episode, which is fairly recent because they did John Carpenter and covered the movie. Right. And I re-listened to it, and it's a pretty good appraisal and picking apart of it. So if we're letting anyone down by not covering covering it in depth, there is a backup. And also, while you're at Blank Check, listen to my episode on Heartbreak Kid, the Elaine May movie. It's really good. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, already plugging my stuff.
Well, people might have already heard it because we have a lot of crossover fans.
That's what I figure.
We have a lot of our fans that listen to them. We don't have a lot of their fans that listen to us, but hopefully that
we're
gonna
change
grow.
it. We're going to change it.
But so this is a John Carpenter film, came out in 1995, but it is a remake, as we said, of the 1960 MGM film Village of the Damned, which, Avery, have you seen the original 1961?
I haven't seen it. I've got my canonical version in my head. I don't want it blurred by something better.
Well, I watched it last night, and you probably don't need to watch it because it is the exact same movie. Like, it is, John Carpenter really did it. There were a lot of things in Carpenter's version that I thought were like, oh, this is like something he modernized, or this is, I'm sure, something that was, but especially because like John Carpenter made The Thing, which is such a departure from the original Thing that I was like, oh, I assume John Carpenter kind of completely reinvented this just based on the concept. No, it is like, there are very few things that differ. The biggest difference is that, of course, in this movie, the women have the option of an abortion, which you are not allowed to. Like in the 1960 version, they're not even allowed to say the word pregnant. So it's, which is hard in a movie where everyone's pregnant. But they have to just like imply it. They can't say the word. But the abortion thing doesn't really matter because none of them get abortions anyway.
I do think it's one of the most interesting parts of the 95 movie in that we still live in a media landscape where when someone mentions abortion as an option, you still sometimes go, oh, okay, that's cool. Like it's still fairly surprising in our, pretty Christianized, moralized media landscape. That's why that oh my God, what's the movie with Jenny Slate? Obvious Child.
Oh, yes, Obvious Child. Yeah.
That was such a big deal because it was like, no, she gets pregnant and she's like, of course she's going to get an abortion. That's what it's actually very common. So it's just really cool when Kirstie Alley just says, you can kill these babies if you want. It's fine.
But we will pay you if you don't. Which is the other thing is like, I feel like in a lot of modern movies, even when abortion is mentioned, it's very rarely taken up. Like it rarely happens. And part of that is because there's more, dramatic potential in having the kid, I guess, for a lot of plots. But it's very rare that you actually see someone get an abortion in a movie, even when it is mentioned.
In like DC, Superman and Lois, their canon event at some point seems to be we have a child, and then DC tries to walk it back a little bit because it's very frustrating to have Superman having to worry about a baby or a kid, or then you've got too many superpowered brats running around. So I think the next logical step at this point is for Superman and Lois to get pregnant and then have an abortion.
Yeah, like every 12 issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Every generation needs their version of the Superman Lois
abortion.
Lane's abortion story.
Yeah.
It needs to be adapted to film. You can't make a Superman movie and not do the abortion.
And it opens up room for these superpowered abortionists, of course. Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex. A regular abortion is not going to take. It's going to need to be a kryptonite coat hanger, and that's an awful thing to say. That is terrible.
I also love establishing that Clark refuses to use a condom. He's just like,
oh, no.
It doesn't feel as good.
He's the most powerful man in the world. You think he's gonna put on a second skin? No, come on.
All right, well, there's our social clip for this episode. The classic Superman abortion riff.
Thank you for that gift, Avery.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
So, okay, this film takes place in a small town, population 2,000, called Midwich, which is at least how we pronounce it here.
Well, which also a town name that makes more sense in the original, where it takes place in Europe or in England, because
which used to be Europe. It used to be
true. Europe, yeah, used to be for a small time Europe, but it's a very English town name.
So it's a small town where everybody knows each other, and they all get together for some kind of festive event. And during this event, a strange force, invisible but makes a whooshing sound, so not completely inaudible, swoops down from the sky.
It's very cinematic Galactus style.
Yes.
Like we could do aliens, or we could do like a weird cloud. I think that's much better.
Everybody within a radius of the town simultaneously loses consciousness, and even if you were to drive into town or walk into town across that border, you pass right out. Which is what happens to State Trooper Seth Meyers in the movie. There's an uncredited.
That's crazy. Seth Meyers from SNL.
Yes.
Wow. Are you sure about this?
It's on Letterboxd, and also you can look at his face, and it appears to be Seth Meyers.
But is it on IMDb?
I'm never looking at Seth Meyers' face. He's simply too handsome, which is, I guess, the thing we're meant to think about Seth Meyers.
I guess he looks like Brian Bolland's Joker to me, but it's...
Oh my God, you're right. Oh, that's a really good pull.
Oh,
we need another Joker movie.
Let's do another one.
Another cinematic Joker stat.
When they wake up a couple of months, I guess probably 6 to 8 weeks or so later, everybody who can get pregnant is pregnant.
To be clear, they wake up 6 hours after they pass out.
They wake up 6 hours later, then everything seems like it's fine, and then weeks pass, and there is, well, I guess not everybody. I guess there are
there's
total of 10 pregnancies. Right.
Which I was confused. Are we to understand that there are 10 women in this town? Or only 10 of the women?
Only 10. It's weird that when you look
10.
at descriptions of the movie, which is I think what messed me up, I went in with the expectation of thinking that when they woke up, everybody was going to be pregnant. It's 10 pregnancies.
But don't they talk about like, oh, this also happens in an Inuit village where there were like 100 of the children?
No, I think it's always the same number of children in the other locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are 10 pregnancies. 9 babies are born. 1 is stillborn.
But we should note that one of the women is a virgin.
Yes.
Yeah. She's a teenage girl, I believe 17.
Yeah,
it's
played
mentioned
by
in the wiki, maybe, but not the
Patton Oswalt's new wife, Meredith Salinger.
Okay.
What was the relationship between? We got Mark Hamill as a priest in this movie. Speaking of jokers,
Yeah.
What was his relationship to the woman?
He's a reverend, not a priest. He can have a wife.
He's
and
married.
That was his wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the cast before we get too deep into this. There's a lot of people who are better known for major franchise works. We have Christopher Reeve, top billing as the town doctor.
Mm-hmm.
They use the OB in town. So we have a Superman. We've got who would have been the biggest star at the time, Kirstie Alley, as Dr. Susan Werner, a amoral government scientist who's fascinated by this phenomenon.
Yeah, she was in the middle of her hot streak in '95, wasn't she?
She was recently off of
Emmy
Cheers.
wins, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, she has done a Star Trek. She was Lieutenant Savick in Star Trek 2, but not in Star Trek 3 or 4. We have also, in addition to having Superman, the Joker, and a Vulcan in the cast, we've got young Thomas Dekker, one of the lead children, who would later be John Connor in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. So,
which is a good show. That's
never
a good
seen it.
show, in my opinion. It's great.
I'm fascinated by it despite having never seen it. And I keep wanting to watch it. And then whenever I have the wild hair to go watch it, it's not streaming anywhere. I do think it's on Netflix right now.
I would say, I think it's maybe the third best Terminator thing, if you don't include the 3D ride. So maybe the fourth best Terminator thing.
The 3D ride is cool.
It's pretty good. It's got some kind of person of interest style stuff in that it's just a constant fight against various AIs or the developing of AIs. But yeah, Lena Headey's in it. She's very good. You've got Summer Glau. You've got not Garrett Hedlund, but the guy in Deadwood who plays 2 characters. I always forget his name.
Was Joss Whedon involved in that show at
No,
all? It feels like a very Whedon-y show in my memory.
Because Summer Glau was there. It went head to head. Basically, it was the lead-in was Dollhouse. Or vice versa. And one of the things that got blamed for the cancellation of the Sarah Connor Chronicles was that when Dollhouse was struggling at the end of its first season, Fox felt like they couldn't cancel another Joss Whedon show after one season because of the Firefly outcry. And some people blamed that for why Terminator got canceled instead, because like they had to cut something.
Another reason to hate Joss Whedon.
So we have 9 creepy little babies are born.
Yes, which it's very funny to, I don't know if you two had this experience, but watching a movie from '95 with these young children and realizing that they're all like millennials. They're all our age basically now. Most of them don't seem to still be acting. And I definitely was like, I wonder how many of these guys are posters now. Like how many of these have I like maybe faved and not realized it? Because the childhood actor stuff that seems to lead into posting. Mara Wilson, come on the show.
We have extended an invitation to Mara Wilson to come on the show. So 5 boys and 4 girls are born, and we cut ahead to a little bit later, but as they are growing up, they exhibit terrifying psychic powers, which they use to punish their parents for fun.
Not for fun, in retaliation.
Well,
yeah, there's always a reason. They always get pushed too far.
Yes.
I blame the victims in these cases. It's definitely on the parents.
For example, we have the aforementioned incident where one of the children's mothers is compelled to put her arm in the... Oh, right, because this is provoked because the soup was kind of hot.
Yeah.
And because she served soup that was a little bit too hot to her child, her child forced her to put her arm in the boiling hot soup and burn her flesh.
Yeah, so she's served the soup, but she is still making more soup. That thing is still on the boil.
Yes,
it's there's a lot going on in the kitchen at the time.
Was it too hot, or was it not hot enough, Mom?
Yeah. The real crime is misdiagnosing what she did wrong. The soup is actually too cold.
Well, when you're expecting a cold gazpacho and it's, and it's room temp, it's going to feel,
it's scalding
hot. Yeah,
it's scalded her mouth.
And then later, although I don't know what the transgression was for this one of them compels her mother to jump off of a cliff.
It's the same.
It's the same mother,
mom?
yeah.
Okay.
It's Christopher Reeve's wife.
Yeah, and it's the lead child of the children. It's interesting that the girl is the leader, but yeah, she seems to have a grudge against her mum for the soup incident, and tells her to off herself.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess boiling her arm was not enough. She was like, I'm still pissed about the soup thing.
Well, because she didn't see it through because it got interrupted by Miss Crocodile Dundee.
Yes, that is true. Who the school principal,
Linda.
Yes,
yeah.
Linda Kozlowski is the actress's name. Is married to was married to the Crocodile Dundee for a long time. They did get divorced, but she's known. They met on the set, I believe. She's like the love interest in the Crocodile Dundee movies. Yeah, and then actually married the Dundee himself.
And she maybe gives the best performance in this film. I'd love to give it to Kirstie Alley. I'm a big Drop Dead Gorgeous fan, but she overeggs it a little bit. Mark Hamill does too. Christopher Reeve kind of sleepwalks through this thing. I think it's Linda taking the MVP.
Yeah, she's really good in this.
I wouldn't argue with that.
But yeah, like you were saying earlier, Avery, like the first half hour of this, I think really cooks. Like
before the kids are born. And you don't know what's going on. There's, there's this great image where, because there's like this school opening fair that everyone is at when they all pass out, there's a guy grilling hot dogs. And then when they wake up, it's 6 hours they're passed out. And he's like cooked to death on the grill.
Yeah. And they cut away very quickly too. Like it gives you just enough time to be like, and not enough time to be like, oh, I can see how they did that.
Yeah. Right. It's a very compelling mystery, right? Because like, oh, it's just a normal small town. Wait, now everyone's passed out, and they're trying to. Oh, it's like a very hard boundary. It's very under the dome a little bit.
I was thinking exactly that. Yeah, I like the way that watching the sort of process of they're trying to figure out like how does this work, and even though they don't really get an answer, it made it kind of more interesting because every new development made it more impossible and more intriguing.
Sorry, can we do a quick Under the Dome detour digression?
Yes, let's get into Under the Dome. Hell yeah.
Under the Dome. Okay, I was excited for Under the Dome. I love Stephen King.
The book or the series?
The series.
Okay.
The series. I had read the book. I was excited for the series. I got maybe 4 episodes in and had to bounce. Here's the thing that really frustrated me about the Under the Dome TV show. There would be times when they are standing right next to the dome. And you can see on the ground the curve of the dome as it stretches around them. The dome is big enough that at any point where you are right next to the dome, the line on the ground, it would be a straight line.
Yes, yeah, because it's enormous.
It's enormous.
You shouldn't be able to see the curvature of the dome.
You should never be able to see the curvature of the dome if you're right next to it.
Flat dome
really,
theory.
really bothered me. But
I'm a flat domer.
I'm a flat domer. I have a Zoomer friend named Emily who loves to go back through old TV shows, binge them. I put them on Plex for her or whatever. And she said, "Have you heard of this thing Under the Dome?" And I said, "It's terrible. Don't watch it. They get domes completely wrong."
We always talk about fulfilling the promise of the premise. And what's the most important part of Under the Dome? It's the fucking dome.
And it's a big dome.
If you're going to get the dome wrong,
it's about the domes. She said, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch all 3 seasons." And I said, "You're not going to make it 3
seasons of Under the Dome."
There were 3 seasons
and those are
of Under the Dome.
network seasons, right? Aren't those like 20 episode seasons?
I think maybe they got cut down to like 14-ish for 2 and 3. But yeah, she made it to maybe episode 10 of season 3. I was like, I cannot do this anymore.
So
I'm like,
close to the end, though.
You're so close to the end. Just do it. She could not power through. It's simply too bad.
I'm glad this came
That's
up.
Under the Dome digression.
No, it's great because I've been trying for years to make under the dome a slang term. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I think like if someone's like really fucked up or like saying something stupid, you could say that person's under the dome, man. And I bring it up just kind of in any circumstance, and no one's really caught on to it. But I love being like, what is that person talking about? They're under the dome right now.
Stop trying to make fetch happen, Dalton.
If you're trapped in a situation, if you're highly dependent on propane, if you've seen a cow get bisected, you're in your under the dome era. It's giving dome.
I'm dome pilled. I'm dome maxing.
You undered into the dome toilet.
So in the 1960 version, also similar to Under the Dome, they do a thing where they have a plane fly over the town to test the sort of upper limit. And it's so funny because there's a real pilot in there, and they kept being like, okay, fly a little lower, but pull up if you feel anything, but fly a little lower. And of course, the pilot passes out and the plane crashes. I'm like, what
did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
That's a bad plan. I'm going to say it. The 60s is not sending their best.
Yes. But yeah, the first half hour plays out like a really intriguing mystery because then everyone wakes up and it's like, oh, everyone's fine. They just fainted. There's no like health issues. Oh, now someone's pregnant. Oh, wait, now everyone's pregnant and this person couldn't be. And then, oh, all the babies have narrow fingernails and their hair is shaped different.
And their DNA is all the same, like their siblings.
Yes. Yeah, like they're siblings, and we don't know, where the DNA came from. And did someone like impregnate everyone while they were passed out? Like what happened here? And then it just kind of from there goes into, oh, well, all the kids are psychic and evil.
Yeah, they jump ahead in time pretty dramatically at around the midpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
We go from like the first couple of months, and I guess maybe when the kid like does the burning, like the horrible incident, it looks like they're probably about 2, I guess. Mm-hmm. But we make these leaps in time, and by the time we get to like the time period the rest of the film is set, it's weird where it now feels like we're somehow still ahead of the characters because they've been around these kids for their entire lives. Look, there probably was like 5 or 6 now. And they're still kind of putting together, I think they can read our minds. Like, no, obviously they can read I think they might have a telepathic connection. They are walking in step silently 2 by 2 across town. Of course they can read each other's thoughts.
Yeah, there's a point later in the film where they're like, the kids seem to be implying that they pair off in some way, like their partner. It's like, yeah, they walk 2 by 2 constantly. They're always paired off. Yeah, they're all dressed in the same clothes, which they mentioned on Blank Check. Like, who's buying those? Are the parents buying them? The clothes all look the same.
I got the picture in my head of them standing outside of the one barber shop in town, telepathically compelling the person to give them all matching haircuts.
One of them's accidentally growing in darker and is just quietly saying to the barber, bleach, bleach me up.
Maybe it's just because there's one barber that's the only kid haircuts he knows how to do,
Oh, 100%. That's it. There's only one barber. There's only one stylist in town. So they're like, all of them independently are like, I want to freshen up my look. I want to get something new. And this guy only has one option. It's gray. It's like a rich person's house on TikTok. Everything is gray.
Yeah.
I think the time skip is smart. Because the problem with this movie, the biggest problem, is that you are reliant on the acting abilities of children.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need them to just act. You need them to act and be scary and threatening and convincing in doing a lot of internal stuff. Like they are using psychic powers that don't manifest physically other than creepy glowing eyes.
Yeah.
So I think a time jump is smart. They should have maybe jumped a bit older. Maybe have the powers have some delayed onset, with like puberty or something. But yeah, as it is, you've got a bunch of like maybe like 10-year-olds by the end of the movie being kind of wooden and unconvincing. Thomas Dekker does do a good job. There's a reason he ended up fighting the Terminators, I think.
Yeah, he actually is really good.
And he has the most complicated role of them, right? Because this is David. This is the one child whose partner, who was supposed to be his pair, was the stillborn baby, which is,
I will say, I think the interesting thing about the stillborn baby is that we don't know for certain it's stillborn.
Right.
We see Kirstie Alley delivering the baby, and then she says, "I'm sorry, it's stillborn," and then she hurries
just
it out of
runs
there.
off with it. Yeah.
And she wants a child to do an autopsy on. I think there's a non-zero chance she kills that baby as it's being born.
Yeah, that I think that's a huge possibility. It also could just be because we see it later and it's more alien looking than the other children. It could be just that it came out looking more alien looking, so she was like, "Oh, this is the one. This is like I need to research this one," and then killed it. I think also the problem is just sort of a tonal mismatch with the look of the children. Like the beginning is such an interesting mystery and feels very like an investigation of these small town dynamics and how they react to this weird thing happening. And then, it's like the white hair, the matching outfits, the glowing, like it all of a sudden gets very kind of pulpy in a way that feels more artificial, that kind of fits in the 1960 version because that's the style of the time. But here it's sort of a weird retro throwback that I don't know reads as chilling as the rest of the movie.
One of Dalton's cats is going absolutely nuts trying to get in here right now.
Weenie is going apeshit trying to get, he's scratching at the door right now.
Ween just loves this movie and wants to contribute
wants
a take.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
Perhaps psychically compelled to scratch at the door and join in.
What's kind of interesting in the 1960 version, I think because for the glowing eyes, they didn't have the technology to like map it to a moving kid. All of the shots of the glowing eyes are just a freeze frame of the kid, and which is kind of more chilling because they're just like perfectly still with the glowing eyes. And I think actually makes those glowing eye sequences kind of legitimately unnerving in a way that I don't really think they are in the 95 version.
I want to give a shout out though that when you get the scene where they're doing the eye dilation and you get the really extreme close up on the eyes and the iris is like 2 layered and has this kind of, that's where I was really getting the most like sort of, oh, cool John Carpenter movie type stuff where for whatever reason, I don't even think there's a creature effect like that in The Mouth of Madness, but it made me think about like that kind of imagination where it was truly otherworldly. Oh, that was a neat effect.
Or at the end when the girl is like trying to break through the brick wall and she looks like the meme of the kid at his desk with all the veins popping out.
The final alien effect when you start to see through like what their faces might be like underneath the sort of human skin. I think it's a pretty decent, pretty good effect.
Very cool, very scary.
That's definitely one of the images that lingered with me as a kid, like Christopher Reeve straining to hold the image of the brick wall in his mind, and like the kids eventually powering through and like busting it apart. It's for me, it's her skull showing through her skin, as you say. It's Kirstie Alley being forced to do an autopsy on herself as punishment for autopsying the baby. Those are the really strong images to me. It's Carpenter. There's gonna be strong images in the movie.
Yeah, there's some gnarly stuff. Basically, to sort of summarize the plot at this point, everyone at a certain point figures out these kids are aliens. And they're like, or some sort of higher being.
Right. They never explicitly say extraterrestrials, but like something like that, right?
Yeah. And they have these powers and they're like, oh, we're very defensive because we are going to grow up to overpower you and take over, and we can't have you, resisting us or whatever. Christopher Reeves decides to respond to this by building a time bomb and bringing it to the school where all the kids are and blowing them all up. Except for David. And this is a change from the 1960 version. David's whole arc doesn't really exist in the 1960. There's no autopsied 10th kid. This is all a good, I think, a very strong addition to the remake of like making David sort of the most human of them, who then gets to go off with Linda, the Mrs. Dundee at the end. Yes. And so all the kids blow up. The end.
He packs a briefcase or a suitcase or something with a bunch of TNT or dynamite or something.
Yeah,
and it's very fun. When the bomb goes off, there are multiple explosions from one source. Maybe the kids have some kind of kerosene blood or something.
When you build a cartoon bomb, you don't know what the results are going to be.
It really is an Acme style. He's got the bell alarm clock. It's really great.
Which this does happen in the 1960 movie, and I feel like in the 1960s you could say, okay, our leading man knows how to make a bomb, don't ask questions. But I do feel like in the 95 one, I'm like, how does this doctor know how to construct a functional time bomb?
Well, yeah, he's I know. I maybe they teach that in med school. He does. He goes to the town explosive shed, which every town has. So
Every
maybe
small
just
town,
In America, yeah.
maybe everyone in the town has some familiarity with explosives. Maybe this is Midwich is the town that Alfred Nobel built, and in school they all get a primer on how to make a bomb.
Yeah, it's it does feel like, so apparently in sort of the years after, Carpenter has said this is not one of his favorite films that he did, and that he was sort of sleepwalking through it. And
it was a contractual obligation too, right?
Yeah. I think, but although he says he was a huge fan of the original, like he does love the original movie, and so he did sort of jump on the chance to make this one. But yeah, like it's so weird contrasting it with The Thing, because like Carpenter at this point is like, he's known for his remakes but like a really inventive remakes, and this just doesn't have any. Like, he really just makes a straight ahead beat for beat kind of remake, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
for him.
it's at the end of his career. He's starting to make the stinkers. He's in his flop era, and you don't feel the passion, I guess, in this movie, which that he has for his other ones.
No disrespect, because John Carpenter, one of the all-time filmmaker runs ever, from like Halloween through the 80s, is just banger after banger after banger. So, we can't be too hard on Carpenter for this one.
And he's a fellow gamer. He loves his video games these days.
And we know he loves a paycheck.
That's true. Every once in a while, he just puts out his hand.
Yes.
And a bunch of money appears.
And a bunch of glowing-eyed children.
And we love that for
him. Give him some money.
So when we come back from our break, we're going to hear about I would expect, more imaginative remake of Village of the Damned. Something it's like I imagine that I'll say it right now. I am more imaginative than John Carpenter.
That's
lay
right.
that expectation. Let's really.
Avery is here to outdo Carpenter.
I think I did some stuff. I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited to share it.
We're excited as well. We're going to go take a quick break. Please come back with us to hear Avery's Dark Universe remake of Village of the Damned.
I'm Tom Zalatnai.
And I'm Teffer Adjemian.
And we're the hosts of the No Bad Food podcast.
No Bad Food is a show about great food and the people who love to make and eat it. Our mandate is simple: to explore, taste, and learn about food in ways that celebrate all the things that make it great.
Every week we dig into a different dish, meal, ingredient, cuisine, or piece of food media, exploring the history and culture around it, sharing favorite recipes, and learning from our wonderful guests.
The only rule?
You gotta love it.
After all, there's no such thing as bad food.
Find us in the Pod Cavern or wherever fine podcasts are sold.
We are back here in the Dark Universe with our guest Avery Edison, who is about to present her pitch for a remake of The Village of the Damned. Very excited to hear what you have in mind. How do you want to begin, Avery?
I think I'll just get into it. We'll take little breaks.
Sure, yeah.
So I'll just do this first.
This is like maybe the first guest episode where we can kind of treat it like an episode of the show, and like, yeah, whenever we want, let's take a break and talk through what we got.
That's my hope.
All right, let's go. Please don't make me score it.
Also, apologies if I don't nail the voices. Okay.
Oh shit, we got voices.
Village of the Damned. Title card: Midwich, Southwest England, 1994.
Back in England, yes.
Back in England, back in its roots.
Where it belongs.
A lush green field under a clear blue sky. A gentle breeze moves through the surrounding trees. Birds call. The sound of the wind and birdsong becomes louder and louder, louder and louder, crescendoing until they completely cut a half second before something huge and bright roars through the sky and crashes into the ground. When the dust clears, we're presented with a shiny 50s movie-style UFO. It looks fake. It looks too fake. like a Monty Python cutout pasted onto the film. It obviously does not exist the way everything else in the frame does. The camera shakes a little and starts slowly panning away at a tilted angle. It corrects, quickly snaps itself back to position so the UFO is centered in the frame once more, but it soon starts to list away again. We cut to a farmer and his wife, Alan and Barbara Sugden, leaning over their fence to look at this bizarre, enormous thing. They've never seen anything like it. They want to take it in, inspect it, but their heads keep turning away against their will. 3 black Range Rovers pull up, stopping between the couple and the ship's landing site. Uniformed men and women, police, soldiers, pour out of the first 2 cars. Some of them are already carrying assault rifles, while others unload heavier weaponry, grenade launchers and mortars from the boot, or the trunk for our American listeners. From the final car emerges one Dr. Henry Jekyll. Prodigium has arrived.
Wow. All right. We're making this canon.
Far out.
It's canon from RIP.
Yes,
I'm not
Russell
pussyfooting
Crowe.
around here.
Russell
Crowe
is here.
back. It's set in the opening is set in 1994. We can get him back for a little cameo.
Yes. A little bit of CGI de-aging.
Yeah. Oh, that would actually work with this, as we'll get to. Alan, the farmer, calls out to ask if he should do something, call the police perhaps. Jekyll and his soldiers ignore them until his wife, Barbara, an American, yells, "We can't look at it. It won't let us look at it." That gets Jekyll's attention. He walks over to the fence and tells the couple, "Yes, isn't it fascinating? I can feel my eyes pulling away, my mind tugging my attention elsewhere. Still, we were warned about such a possibility." Warned? That's a Dorset accent for anyone who doesn't. That's Alan, the farmer. "Yes, an associate of mine was certain that something would arrive here today." Dr. Jekyll looks to his car and we see that Indrid Cold is in the front passenger seat. Yeah! He insisted that we destroy this strange vessel and that he be here to see it happen, but he won't leave the car. I've never seen him afraid, but cautious, wary, whatever it is, at least for once he's not smiling. Alan and Barbara have absolutely no idea what this man is talking about, but they heard one word loud and clear. "Destroy it, but you don't even know what it is." Jekyll smiles. "You don't know me, but I'm a man of science. Part of me wants nothing more than to save this craft, perhaps, and study it, perhaps. But another part of me, he's all too happy to see it burn."
Yeah.
As he says that, one of the Prodigium men yells, "Clear!" and fires a rocket launcher at the UFO. The missile sails up into the air and arcs down towards the ship before missing it by 500 meters and making another smaller hole in the field. Jekyll leaves the couple and strides angrily towards his men. "For God's sake, perhaps adjust guidance for the very visual effect you were told to prepare for." He fades out as we remain focused on the couple. Barbara, the farmer's wife, is unsteady on her feet, swaying from side to side. The farmer grabs her shoulders, holds her still, asks if she's okay, says maybe they should go inside. She's nodding in agreement when, in the background, a second rocket is fired and hits. A massive shockwave radiates from the UFO, pushing those closer to it back, setting off the alarms on the Prodigium cars, and knocking Barbara unconscious. Her husband kneels down, tries to wake her up, checks her for bumps and bruises. She stirs, insists she's fine. They watch the Prodigium soldiers collect the remains of the ship in large, thick black bags. Jekyll, relieved that the hard part is done, ambles back over. "I trust you're all right? Too much excitement, perhaps. Yes, I can't imagine things like this happen too much in... What's this town called again?" Alan shakes his head. "Does this look like a town to you?" Barbara laughs. "I made the same mistake when I got here, but technically it's a village. The village of..." Smash cut to a split frame of 2 close-ups side by side of the farmer and his wife years later. They're both in dark underground cells illuminated by candlelight. He looks like a zombie. One of his eyes is stabbed out, the other is milky white, and the skin around it is burned. His thick head of hair is gone. A few tufts remain, dotting a bloody, torn scalp. An ear is missing. His jaw is dislocated. He's drooling. His nose has been cut off. What we can see of his chest and shoulders is covered in scratches, scars, and scabbed over wounds still healing. His wife, by contrast, looks relatively healthy. Her hair is still there, but it's gone bone white. Her eyes are intact, but she's sobbing. Her jaw is fine, but she's using it to scream. The droning music in the background, slowed down, pitch-shifted bird song, is too loud for us to hear what she's yelling, but it's 2 words over and over. "Kill me, kill me, kill me." Title card, Village of the Damned.
Damn.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's a hook.
This is a great start. I'm really curious. I love the sort of, it's not mixed media, but kind of feels like with the UFO, with like, this is, I it reminds me of, I did a pitch for a Mothman comic series a few years ago, where I was like, how do we communicate that the Mothman is not of this world? And I was like, well, it has to not match the visual language of anything around it. So like, what if the Mothman was built of collage or like not traditional illustration, you know? And like, it seems like you're kind of doing the same thing here, where like, we're taking this otherworldly thing and communicating that by having it not match the visual language of the world it's placed in, on a media level, on like a film level, because that's how we're communicating. And I love that stuff. I think that's so cool.
I also love the idea of the characters being incapable of regarding it. And for the way that it's entered for us, I mean, there's two avenues. Like we could also be denied seeing it, but I think that just the jarring image of here's a thing that does not belong, right? And rather than having to have the characters somehow respond to that, their response is that they can't respond to it. That I think that's chilling. I really like that.
It's a way more interesting take on like Lovecraftian stuff than just being like, oh, it's like big and ugly. You can't even fathom it because it's like an octopus face, you know? It's like more literally unfathomable.
I wanted it to really emphasize the alien nature, like something, so alien that we can't understand it. And also playing into this idea of control early, the ship or something in the ship is already affecting people and trying to hide, because this is based on the Midwich Cuckoos, right? And Cuckoos are having a big moment. You've got Gretchen Felker-Martin's book Cuckoo coming out. You've got the Hunter Schafer movie Cuckoo with Dan Stevens. So this is a prime time for this remake, in my opinion, although maybe we'll get drowned out. Ironically, considering the cuckoo bird life cycle. So with the children going into this, my very first idea for the pitch was something to combat the fact that we are going to be relying on child actors and struggling with those performances, and also wanting to communicate how they look visibly alien to the people around them while still looking like children. So I'll say this now. The children of this alien are going to have CGI deep fake faces, Peter Cushing in Rogue One style. Like we're going to take something which I think is abominable, and use it to our advantage.
Like so deliberately uncanny.
Deliberately uncanny.
Yeah.
Like they could technically pass in society, but if you saw someone with a Peter Cushing style reanimated face, you would be like, that's, it's uncanny valley. There's something off there.
Well, going Renesmee mode.
Exactly.
Well, and also it's using, I know there's a lot of controversy. We don't have to dive too deep into it, but of course using AI to replace creators and stuff. But this wouldn't, like if we were to do like a deep fake thing, you could take someone's face and have them give the performance, but then use deep fake technology to put it on a different body. It reminds me of like David Bowie in the 90s doing some music video stuff, would project map his own face using projections onto like a model of a head and create like a very strange looking uncanny effect. And this would kind of be the same thing, just using contemporary technology not to replace any form of creation, but to amplify it.
Right. I mean, you could also, in Avatar: The Way of Water, you have Sigourney Weaver playing a teenager through motion capture, right? And like you could cast an actor who you think has the right energy for it, who is of any age, and then apply this technology in order to have them do the performance. And that would make it weirder because they wouldn't necessarily be playing it in a childlike fashion.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah. There's no AI here. It's just the CGI. Like the thing that's objectionable about when they use this as they do now, like bringing Christopher Reeve back for the Flash,
sure.
or Cushing and Carrie Fisher is like not having the permission. And here we can get the adult actors' permission.
Yeah.
So that's the pitch for the kids' faces, because that's
awesome.
That's not mentioned in the thing I have written down. Also, I will say I realized once I was done with this, I do not have anywhere that explains that several women in the town got pregnant and gave birth to babies. That is pre-required knowledge that everyone listening to this will know, because that's a mistake I made. I'm happy to own up to.
It's not a mistake. It's a pitch, right? And,
it's a pitch.
We can just say that thing happens and move on.
Yeah,
just-
Dalton
it's just
wishes I would do that
currently-
more often.
It's just currently missing from the pitch. And yeah, we're gonna skip over. There's going to be like points in the movie where we could fill in things happening, but I'm just hitting the major plot moments, I guess, in this pitch. So I just want to get ahead of that. Okay, so let's get back to it. Title card, 2004. So we're 10 years ahead now.
Okay.
A large delivery truck passes a Midwich 1 mile sign and pulls over to the side of the road. In the cab are the driver and passenger. The latter is a woman played by Caitlin Shale, who is, in my opinion, the best actor of her generation. So I just wanted to shove her in there somewhere.
Hell yeah.
The driver tells her, Joan, I've appreciated your company. These trips are never fun, so I'll give you some advice. Stay in your seat. Make the journey back with me. I'll drop you at the train station. You can make your way to the airport, go home. There's something wrong with this place. That may be, but I have to see this through. Then this is as far as I can take you. We don't go into the village itself, but you might be able to get a lift from one of them. He gestures to the half-dozen villagers waiting with their cars, some already moving to unload the truck. They move quickly and silently, coordinated. Joan steps down from the truck and approaches one of the villagers, asks for a ride. The villager shakes his head and moves on. Joan asks another villager and another, could you talk to me at least? Hello? They all meet her with silence. Finally, one responds, you should leave. Go. The other villagers all stop in place, and the one who spoke shouts, I'm sorry, as she opens her car door, puts a hand against the frame, and slams the door closed. Her bones crunch, she screams, and the rest of the villagers resume their work. Joan turns to the truck driver, but he's standing off to the side, pointedly looking away. She looks at the truck. She thinks about leaving. She walks down the road to the village proper. It's a picturesque English village full of thatched roof bungalows and quaint storefronts, all based around a village square. It's like something out of a postcard, except that the roofs are all patchy and moldy. The shops are all closed. And in that village square is something ill-fittingly modern, the spire. It's only half constructed, but it's already twice the height of the village hall and covered in mirrored glass. Several villagers are working to finish its upper layers. None of them look at Joan as she approaches. She sees herself in the reflection and then thinks she sees something behind it. She wants to look closer, but instead she turns away against her own will. Joan starts asking the villagers, who are attending to various small tasks and errands with quiet efficiency, if there's a hotel she can check into or a bed and breakfast or something. Again, none of them will respond. They refuse to even meet her eyes. She notices that most of them are injured in some way, limping, bruised, some even missing fingers. She's unsettled, but tries a new tack. Could someone direct her to the Sugden farm? That gets attention. One of the villagers, a woman, looks up and asks, Why there? Joan explains that Barbara Sugden is her aunt, and that nobody on the other side of the Atlantic has heard from her in a very long time, and they're worried. The villager starts crying, but tells Joan very calmly, Please wait here, someone will be with you momentarily. The villager returns to her work for a second before turning back to Joan and grunting, begging, Go now, they're coming! Then she screams, shoots out her arm through the plate glass window she's standing next to, grabs a shard of the broken glass, and cuts out her own tongue. She falls to the ground, bleeding from the mouth. So the movie's going to be full of these, again, the images from the first one where the villagers are just doing something horrifically violent to themselves against their own will, desperately trying not to. I haven't included too many of them in this pitch.
No, but we get the idea, though, and that's, like, I like that you also, like, you have to kind of pick up the baton from The Happening, right? Which is like that wall to wall, and is one of the things about the movie that actually is kind of cool, is the way those are executed, right? Yeah, it's spooky. I like the way that, like, you talked about how you wish there'd been more time jumped in the other versions of the film. Here, you're jumping into a status quo, but you've created mystery for the audience that I don't think exists in the film that we watched.
Yeah.
If you did not know anything going into this, it would be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I think we'd need maybe a credits sequence, which obviously you don't get in movies anymore because we developed the technology to not have to show all the credits up front. It's one of the most infuriating things about old movies where, like, they didn't know you could put them all at the end. But yeah, maybe during a credit sequence, we'd have a montage style of the various women in the village fainting and then getting pregnant, babies being born, initially happy, and then the face is turning dour or something.
Yeah, I like that you have more going on than just that, so we can just kind of breeze through it and let people know this is what happened in the wake, you know. I also love when there's a spire, a monolith, any sort of big, creepy, I don't know what word.
I don't know, like an artifact, like a totem,
a mysterious.
There is a
tower.
physical manifestation of this is the symbol of the otherworldly thing that's happening, which makes there an obvious thing. Like, okay, when the movie's over, this thing has to get, maybe we blow it up, depending on what kind of movie it is.
I've been playing a lot of Slay the Spire. It's a roguelike deck builder video game that I'm getting to 6 years too late. And I didn't even realize until like the fourth time I typed Spire in this document. I was like, oh, right, that's where I'm fucking pulling it from. But yeah, no, it's I very much see it as like almost bursting from the ground and disrupting the village like an infection. This village is very I grew up in a tiny village called Wareham in Dorset, and so this is all pulled from that, and I can picture in my head in the town square where usually the town crier is, which we have, and she's a woman, by the way. We're very modern. Very modern.
Town criers can be women now.
Town criers can be women too. I think even the mayor's a woman. That's pretty exciting. But I can picture the spire, just this horrible, grotesque spike jutting out of the ground. And I don't go into it in this, but in my head, the reason it's covered in this mirrored glass, both to look very modern and also there's kind of a panopticon thing going on. Like the villagers are always, it's very much that Twilight Zone, the kid who's making everyone pretend to be happy. And so I only know the Simpsons parody of it.
That's funny because
I
know the Simpsons parody of Village of the Damned. Like that's my primary reference point.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, the villagers are all constantly being mentally surveilled, and also with the spire, you don't know if one of the kids inside is looking out through the mirrored glass and watching you. Love to get a panopticon in anything.
Also, knowing how Slay the Spire has wormed its way into your pitch, I'm also wondering when the Fortnite references are going to come in. If you're going to have Goku and Lady Gaga in
these kids can build shit so fast, it's fucking ridiculous. Like there's no competing with them.
Every time they kill someone, they hit the gritty.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back into it.
Okay, she falls to the ground, bleeding from the mouth. Joan backs away, shocked and horrified. She wheels around, looking for some help from the other villagers, but they're ignoring the entire scene. They're working harder, faster. Joan misses what we don't. The large door at the base of the mirrored spire in the center of town is open. Joan doesn't know what to do. She pulls out her flip phone and watches its screen fizzle and burn out, which I guess is implying that the kids are doing that.
Sure.
A voice behind her, a child's voice, calls out, "You should have come next week." Joan turns to face the voice and recoils. It's a child, yes, a small boy, but his face. It's hard to look at his face. It doesn't look right. What do you mean next week? More children arrive, 2 boys and a girl. Their faces are wrong too, but they hold themselves more confidently than the first boy. One of the boys, taller than the other children by 2 or 3 inches, smiles. He's talking about me. We take turns, trips to London, for outreach, making an impact. This week, Dorothy's up, that lovely girl, a real shame. You won't get to meet her. But next week is my turn. And when I'm not here, some of the others, between you and me, without my leadership, standards slip. They might have let you leave, made you leave, even having seen what you've seen. What I've seen, Joan starts to say, but her mouth snaps shut. Quiet, the tall boy says. Children are speaking. He turns to the first boy. As I say, you're right, Charles. Next week would have been better for her, for everyone. You're right. But you shouldn't say it. Joan is panicking, her eyes darting around. She forces her mouth open and asks, "What are you doing to me? What's happening here? Where are your parents?" Before she clamps both her hands over her mouth involuntarily. The boy, who hasn't spoken yet, pipes up, "Strong one, isn't she?" The leader shakes his head and gestures at the villagers. "No, Edward, I'm just too used to these idiots. Forgot what a fresh one's like. I keep saying, London's not enough practice. We need to pick at the delivery drivers a little more." The girl walks up to Joan. "Where are your parents? It's a good question. Actually, you've already met my mummy." She points at the woman who cut out her tongue. The blood has stopped flowing from her mouth, but she's still lying dazed on the ground. The other villagers step around her. "No bedtime kisses for a few weeks, at least. But I think our American friend is more interested in yours and Dorothy's mum and dad, Alec." "Good shout, Bethany," the tall boy says. "Come along." He tilts his head a fraction and Joan flinches. "Ah, Joan. Come along, Joan. Sugden family reunion." The children lead Joan into the spire, her steps forced and halting. She doesn't want to walk, but she has to. Inside, it's a minimalist design paradise, a thoroughly modern, for 2005, interior fantasy. The large circular living area splits off at 6 points, leading to 5 bedrooms and a staircase to the upper floors. The small boy, the one who spoke first, tries to leave the group and go to one of the rooms, but the leader, Alec, admonishes him. Stay with the tour, Charles. United Front and all that. In fact, you can help Joan here with the cellar. Please, no. Get someone else to do it. I hate doing it. I'll do it, Bethany pipes up. I've no doubt you would, and break the woman's arms in the process. But Charles needs the practice. Come on, Charles. The smaller boy looks at Joan sadly. Joan is shaking, crying, pleading with her eyes. Charles closes his eyes and Joan walks forward, pulls a rug off the floor and reveals a trapdoor. She lifts it open and is hit by a foul stench. Good. Now take her down, Charles, into the dark. Joan walks down the stairs. The children don't follow. Charles flinches and Joan lets out a blood-curdling scream. Barbara, what have they done to you? She races up the stairs, furious, and grabs Alec by his shirt, almost lifts him off the ground, but he smiles calmly and blinks slowly at her. She lets him go and starts punching her own face over and over, sinking to the floor. Charles waves his hand a little and she stops. Alec frowns at Charles, but lets her go. Yes, Joan, stop hitting yourself. Bethany and Edward laugh. Did you ever meet your Uncle Alan? Alec asks Joan. As he speaks, the camera swoops down into the cellar, follows the pathway into darkness, and gives us longer, closer looks at the underground prisoners we saw at the end of the prologue. You wouldn't know it to look at him, but I dare say he's one of the most evil men I've ever come across. Stood by and watched while jackbooted thugs destroyed the first truly new life this planet has seen in eons. I'm sure you can understand the need for his punishments. Not that dear old Mum is blameless, of course, but I need her intact. Between you and me, since Dorothy's not here, she's a bit of a disappointment as a sister, and I want some more siblings in the worst way. All 3 of the other children look uncomfortable at this. Joan looks up at Alec, her face a bloody pulp, and spits out, You're a monster. You're all monsters. Edward smiles. That's what they all say, and it hurts our feelings. Bethany kicks at Joan. It's attitudes like that ruined this village. We could have achieved so much more by now if we hadn't had to clean house. She's right, Alec nods. Half the population, plus the children, of course, brutally put down, all because those in charge couldn't accept that while they'd slept, their world had changed. They tried to kill us, you know. We were barely toddlers, almost caught us by surprise, like you did with your visit today. Joan laughs a little, coughing up blood. There's a world of surprises outside this village. Someone will stop you. Alec leans in, right next to her face, incandescent with rage at the very idea. She tries to pull away, his face still awful to look at, but he holds her head still. Nobody will stop us. Nobody can stop us. The moment we were born, we won. You don't understand. The violence, the blood, it's all fun and games, but it's unnecessary. This whole time we've been making you do whatever we want, getting in your head and Tommy knocking around in there. What do you think happens if I tell you to just die? Joan gasps and her skull caves itself in. It's as if her brain has been replaced with pure vacuum. Her head is a crumpled, bloody mess. Her body is still. Alec, Bethany, and Edward walk away to their rooms. Charles stays behind, staring at the body. He's crying. Already, villagers are arriving for cleanup.
Hell yeah.
Whoa.
I love this version of reboot, which I feel like is not a common one, but it's what if the villains in the original movie won and we just skip to that part? Like,
yeah.
It's just what if the plan to kill these children had failed and they are able to continue with some changes in the mythology and everything, but it's like
it's sort of the Evil Dead 2 strategy. It's like, well, then like Evil Dead, yeah, exactly. And then what happened? We're like, Evil Dead 2 isn't really a sequel to Evil Dead. It's more like we just kind of squished the beginning of Evil. We squished Evil Dead. We put that in the beginning, and now we're doing more. Yeah. And that's how this kind of feels, except for with a lot of more like a new personality to it, and based on the script and like already like 100 times more graphic, which of course makes it feel more modern. And I also like you talked about how you wanted to get around the child actor problem. But this has also freed you up to make them, I don't know, they're broader characters or they're bigger characters, right? They've got more of a personality from just being like quiet, still, and creepy, which is kind of the direction you have to give most child actors if you want to accomplish something like this. Ron Moore from Battlestar Galactica always said you have to treat child actors like props. This is the kind of thing where like they can be chilling in a way that an adult is chilling, and it's not. And the fact that that their children is like that's an enhancing the creepiness that's there, not like the nature of the creepiness itself.
Yeah.
I want to play into that a little bit in this early part before they grow up. Yeah, I there's fewer of them. I only have 5 children, and I think that gives you room to give them stronger, independent personalities.
Yes.
I don't know how much has come across, but yeah, you've got this leader one, this shy one, who's sort of the David analog from the first movie. The girl Bethany is clearly like sadistic and ultra violent, even beyond the others. And then you've got this like lackey one, Edward.
And you've introduced conflict within that group already from the start, which didn't exist really in the other than we have David being sort of vulnerable because he's experienced a loss in a way that the others haven't, which makes them more susceptible to like learning compassion. Here, they each have individual traits that put them in conflict with each other. That's independent from that would like exist even if this movie was isolated in the town. But now, since it seems like it's going to explode, it feels like we're going to things are going to get bigger very soon.
My big take. Like when Alex says we won the moment we were born, that my take is that he's right. Like I'm a big comics fan, as
we caught your Dawn of X reference,
X-Men reference, and as much as I love comics and I love reading those stories, I agree with the take that they're an inherently fascist medium, at least superhero comics, because it's literally a thing that says these people are objectively more powerful than other people. And that's a fascist take, that there's a group of people who are better than others. I am always on board with the Superhero Registration Act, the Mutant Registration Act. It would be inevitable that mutants would replace us. And as soon as one superpowered person is born, the morality of your world has to change.
It would be a shift.
We cannot enjoy the freedoms we have now if there's a potential that any random person can be a walking nuclear bomb. But yeah, so as soon as the kids are born, they win. You have to introduce conflict in the group itself, because there's not going to be convincing conflict from outside.
Which is sort of also the Krakoa thing, right? It's like, well, the problems are now coming from within the island, right? Because now they're on top, but being on top, being in power, brings its own problems that now they have to deal with. And I also love the thing that you do that is very rarely done, but is always great, where you introduce someone who we think is the main character and then crush her head very, very soon.
Even Janet Leigh didn't get her head crushed from the inside.
No, I'm very excited about that effect. I say that as if I'm going to get to see this.
Well, that's always how we get the double-edged sword that is this show, is that we get to make up all these movies and then we don't get to watch any of them.
Yeah.
But
it's a bummer.
But the theater of the mind it's free.
It's free and it's its own reward.
Ticket prices are never going to go up.
I went with Caitlin Shale for this role specifically because she's you may have seen her in House of Cards was where I first became aware of her. And then she was in Amy Seimetz's movie She Dies Tomorrow, and also Sun Don't Shine. She's got this very vulnerable, subtle performance to her, and she's someone you do immediately sympathize with and root for. And so I think it will be all the more devastating to see her go through this.
Oh, and she's a Jersey girl too.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. No, automatically producer approved. She's the new lead.
All right. We're back to this.
Get back into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Title card 2014. So another time skip. The spire is long since fully completed, and the majority of the villagers, those that are left anyway, dedicate themselves to a massive brick wall which surrounds the entire village. The labor is hampered by the fact that where before the most common injuries were bruises, scars, and limps, now seemingly every single adult in the village is missing at least one limb. They shuffle about withered and wasted, drooling, groaning. Some of them are engaged in the mass burials of their fallen friends, neighbors, family, all slung into a pit beyond the wall, with only the barest glimmer of recognition in the eyes of the still living villagers. They would wail if they were allowed. They would jump into the pit and join the dead if they could. The children are now adults, 20 years old. Their faces still don't fit right, and their bodies lack muscle tone. They've never had to lift a finger in their lives. Alec looks stronger than the others, but also more manic and angry. They're meeting around a table in the common area of the spire, directly above the entrance to the cellar. The doors to 4 of the bedrooms are open. One is closed. Behind the table hangs a portrait of Dorothy. During the meeting, we learn that Dorothy is believed dead, a victim of the 7/7 London bombings, which were a terrorist incident over here.
Yeah.
The journeys to London were suspended following her death, and in the 9 years since, the children have grown increasingly restless and itchy. With the numbers of the villagers rapidly dwindling, as the last of them finally succumb to years of psychic manipulation and physical abuse, the plan is to move to a new location. It will be painful to abandon the spire, but as Alec reminds the others, they are the children of tomorrow and were meant for much, much more than a field in England. This meeting is to put 2 issues to a vote. The first is to decide where to move to, a large town or small city, somewhere central and connected, so that they can journey into the world again and reestablish their influence. The second issue is more complicated. They need to determine once and for all if Dorothy is truly dead. The whole village must burn before they leave. All traces of their existence must be gone, and Dorothy is a loose end. To know for sure, the children need to amplify their abilities by joining in group mind, which they've not done since they were infants. The lone holdout is Charles. For years, he's refused even the slightest intrusion into his mind by the others. He's even developed his own brick wall, a mental lockbox in which he hides his thoughts. He thinks the others don't know why, but they do. The meeting becomes an intervention as Alec, Bethany, and Edward out Charles as transgender. Yeah, surprise, surprise. It's trans women guesting on Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? And she's made it a trans movie. Apologies.
I mean, if anything, that just makes it more canon with our dark universe. Yeah.
Truly. As I was powering through and catching up on a bunch of episodes, I was like, oh yeah, everyone's going hard on the trans stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it will make this instantly all of our fans' favorite pitch because as we've discovered, our fans are pretty much 90% trans. So
yeah, that makes sense. I'm one of them. I'm not just a fan. They reveal a stash of women's clothing, makeup, accessories, even some medication that they've taken from his room. He promises that he didn't mean to, that he tried to push the thoughts out of his head, but it seems they went into the villagers' minds instead. They started bringing him clothes, slipping old makeup into his pockets. The others are disgusted with what they call Charles's degeneracy and claim that his perversion has infected the villagers and made them useless. He's the reason things fell apart. But they will give him an opportunity to prove himself and make things right. The remaining villagers, called in by Alec, form an orderly queue into the spire. Alec gestures to them. We need to purge the world of your filth, Charles. Charles has been holding back tears, but now they come out. I understand. You want me to kill them, right? Bethany and Edward laugh until Alex silences them with a look. No, Charles, we know you're not the killing kind. So our helpful villagers will take that burden from you. He waves his hand and each villager pulls an implement from their pocket. A pen, a pair of scissors, a small knife. They're going to kill themselves, every last one, while you watch. And just so you're absolutely sure of your part in this, he gestures to the first one and she steps forward, dazed, a screwdriver in her hand. She looks Charles dead in the eye, tells him, you did this to us, and jams the screwdriver into her ear, twisting it and pushing it around until her spasming body falls to the floor. The next villager moves forward with a brick and starts bashing it into his skull over and over, of course, saying, you did this to us. The next villager cuts her own throat. The next drives pruning shears into her heart. It goes on until all that's left of the population of Midwich is a pile of bodies and the 4 children. Charles is a wreck. The tears won't even come anymore. His eyes are bloodshot, his face frozen in horror. Alec pats him on the head. That wasn't so hard, was it? Good girl. Bethany and Edward laugh again. Okay, everyone, time to pack your bags. Coming, Charlie? Charles shakes her head. I thought not. Could have gone either way. Built up some character in you finally, or... Well, obviously we can't leave you here. No telling what you get up to by yourself. So, ask. I want you to ask me. Charles looks up, looks at Alec in his smug, deep fake face, and asks, kill me. Alec smiles and whispers, die, degenerate. And nothing happens. I said, die. Charles is fine. She looks around, amazed she's still alive. Even with the pile of corpses, the stench of death, there's a sense of hope to the room now. Bethany tries, die! Edward tries, yelling, die! It doesn't work. Charles laughs. The others stare at her in outrage and confusion. She laughs and laughs until she's out of breath, doubled over. I've spent 10 years learning to keep you out of my head so you wouldn't see the real me. And now you couldn't get in there if I wanted you to. And I did want you to. Because I thought the only alternative was watching you all bring the world to ruin. Alec bends down to pick up a tool from a fallen villager. Don't worry, Chuck. We'll just kill you with hammers. Charles shakes his head. Do it. You won't. And the tool drops out of Alec's hand as he straightens up against his will. Charles shakes her head, by the way. I didn't switch that pronoun. Charles walks up to him, right up to him, close. That whole time I was practicing. Were you doing the same, Alec? Were you building a brick wall of defense in your mind? Don't. Shush. An adult is speaking. I think I can get into your head and do anything. Make you do whatever I want, be whatever I want. I'd love to put the time in, turn you around, make you and Bethany and Edward into better people or whatever we are. I'd love to be the bigger woman here. But you never let me. Listen up, you faggot. Charles doesn't let him finish. Die, she says sadly, and Alec's head crumples in on itself, and he drops to the floor. Bethany and Edward are running for the door, tripping over the dead bodies. Charles doesn't hesitate. Die. They fall to the ground. She moves the table out of the way, lifts the door to the cellar, and heads down to put Alan and Barbara out of their misery. Then she douses the common room of the spire and the bodies inside in petrol and burns it down. She stands in the doorway, watching the flames work their way around the room until they start licking at the portrait of Dorothy. We hold on that portrait. Okay. Room for a gap if we...
Yes,
yeah.
I do love that even though these kids are alien, you can tell how British they are in their intolerance of Charles.
Truly.
Yes, clearly the UK has...
Turf Island rearing its head.
Exactly, has worn off on these kids. How is this? This isn't the end? It felt
this
very...
isn't the end.
Well,
Okay,
no, we still have to find out what happened to the fifth kid.
Sure, it just felt very climactic.
Well, it's
big showdown.
It's definitely Act 2 climax. I definitely see. Also, we're moving quite fast through plot. There's probably a bunch of time for like scenes of life in the town. I feel I envision like a very like needful things, like things slowly falling apart as things just get worse and worse in this town. Maybe
we need to have gotten to know Charles more before it becomes clear that she's the protagonist of the story.
Yeah.
The mentions that the villagers have been slipping her these clothes and makeup and medicine and stuff, like that's something we'd see.
Yeah. I like that. I like the idea of having some time in there after the time skip to establish each of the aliens' relationship with the townspeople on an individual level, whether it's a question of, okay, how does one of them, torture the adults versus how one of them like plays with them. And then we have the interesting contrast of Charles like having these sort of subconscious interactions where she's like eliciting their aid in something, but like in a way where it is A, accidental, and B, like non-violent. And it's like the only, and I wonder even if there's a point where like, it's clear that the other siblings are aware that Charles is not interested in harming or they think that she's weak, right? And I guess it would be interesting to see if there's any requirement if there's ever a point where Charles has to perform the cruelty they expect in order to try and avoid being detected. Which would build some conflict. And like,
there's definitely Charles is definitely complicit in my mind.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I really like it's a pitch, so we're going through the main plot details, but it's very clear, I think, at this point. I like that instead of this being like, oh, it's the village versus these children, this is almost like a royals drama. Like, right? Like it's almost like it's kind of The Crown, but like instead of it's focused on one village and the people in charge are these evil psychic alien children. And we are witnessing the drama of the court, while they have all these like subjects that they are lording over, but it's not a good versus evil type of story. It is the evil against evil, the drama within them, the vying for power, the conflicts among them, which is, I think, It's not something I've seen. It's almost like if you made like a Hellraiser movie that was just about the politics of the Cenobites, which actually sounds really cool. It's not something we see in horror where it's like, what if the movie was just the monsters? And we just got to like see their struggles within each other. I can't think
Well, that's
of it.
Hotel Transylvania.
You're right. That's Hotel Transylvania. Yeah.
But I think the position that we've established, there's one that we're obviously more sympathetic with because to begin with, we have assigned this character a disenfranchised class to be a member of that makes them a sympathetic character there.
Yeah.
Not to mention that she doesn't want to kill all of us, which I think is probably also a good check in her favor.
Yeah, if I'm voting for Kang or Kodos, I'm gonna vote for the one that doesn't want to kill me.
What I'm curious about is we're not done with it yet, right? I'm trying to kind of unpack what this horror movie is about on a grander level and what the gender of it is contributing to that story. Because the Village of the Damned, at least my reading of it, is sort of based on the fear of the power that our children have over us, right? And so I'm a parent now of a 17-month-old kid, and like you will do anything for that kid. And one of the things you have is what if they figure that out, right? What if your child realizes that you would do anything to keep them from hurting themselves? And if you had like a psycho kid who's willing to throw themselves down the stairs if they don't get an ice cream, right? How would you handle that? What if they could throw you down the stairs if they don't get an ice cream, right? What if they could make that power like so? But then there's
I'm going to teach Avery to do that, by the way.
Oh, yeah. My son's name is Avery.
I'm going to...
okay.
The other Avery.
Yes. So there's that, but then there's also, which I think is the one that's being played with here, is more of that mutant thing of the idea that the next generation is going to literally exists to replace you, right? And they may not have the same values and they may not value you. And that's a fear that you get when you get older that we are seeing like boomers clearly having about millennials and zoomers who don't want to necessarily live the same way and want to operate under the same constraints or have the same political ideologies and are clinging to power desperately so that we never get to do anything. There's never going to be a Gen X president. We'll never have one. You know what I mean? And so it feels like it's doing that second one. And I'm curious to see like where you're going with it in terms of like thematically, where are we headed?
I like obviously I'm sure we'll see more as we get to it, but I like the sort of thematic reading I'm getting so far, and you can correct me if I'm way off base, but I like the idea of basically showing that the more evolved are still going to have the same issues, like that we're seeing like the next evolution of the human race, like that someone that can subjugate us, and yet that power is still subject to the same flaws as the unpowered, right? That like the seeing our own weaknesses and our own flaws still present in those that claim to be our gods, that these things are sort of universal, and seeing how, as much of a threat as they may seem, nobody is immune to collapse,
I was actually honestly like, it kind of didn't occur to me that the half alien or whatever, like hyper intelligent beings would really give a shit about gender at all. And it was kind of blindsided me that they would like react violently against someone being trans. And maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Like the idea that like Dalton was saying that they're still going to have like some pretty petty prejudices.
Yeah.
Right.
Just the fact everyone will other, that they will other the one among, especially like a race that is designed to be so in sync, right? If like their whole purpose is to be one, to be the hive mind, that any sort of deviance from the hive mind will be rejected.
Yeah, but they already have individual things. We already have established that they experience gender, I guess. And otherwise, why would they even have I don't know. I guess I'm coming at it from my own thought of like, well, obviously, if you're smarter and from the future or whatever, why is that going to bother you? But it's like I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's like we're talking about, there's also maybe the idea that when you have, you're positioned, we think about like the thing with where like royals they feel superior to the extent like we have the whole fucking Lannister thing of like they're just fucking each other because no one else is worthy, right? Like the idea of they feel like they're so high above people that they're looking for excuses to kick someone out of their in-group because then their in-group gets smaller. And that's sort of how class and caste works, right? Like that's how
it needs to keep getting more exclusive.
Yes, and you need to have somebody, you need to always feel like that's part of
You're
like how white supremacy
someone.
works, right? Like you need to be able to make sure that there's people beneath you. Because otherwise, no matter how poor you can be as a white person, at least I'm still white and I'm above, so-and-so, right?
And at this point, after the town is completely subjugated and dead,
yeah, who are you gonna step on now? You just stepped on everybody. You got to pick somebody. All right,
Yeah.
I've talked myself back around into getting it. Took me a minute, but let's. I should let my guest continue the pitch.
There's a lot to respond. The immediate thing is the royal court stuff. I definitely see a love triangle / square with Bethany, Edward, and Alec. With maybe Edward wanting to pair it with Bethany. Bethany wants to pair it with Alec, and Alec's attentions, as previously established, are on his mother and his repeated attempts to make more children. I think that's very interesting. I think thematically, the thing that I will say, I wasn't thinking too much about theme. I was thinking too much about plot.
Well, one thing I was wondering is like, do you even want to comment on the theme, or like, is that for us to just express what we're reading into it?
We've just done it for 20 minutes.
That's something we find through plot. I don't know. I guess the theme for me would be there's something about the messiness of being trans. We live in a moment where there is an imperative for very obvious reasons to avoid talking about the more messy aspects of trans identity and coming into your awareness of that. Like, it is undeniable that in Charles's struggling with her gender, she ends up hurting people. And like canon event trans woman stuff, like I tried on my sister's clothes and then like hid that and like maybe like ripped her clothes. Like it's not a big problem in there, but like there's no storybook trans journey that doesn't include some impact on the world around you that we really can't talk about because it gives our enemies. But also like, it's not just like ripping her clothes. There was, I remember, I think it's okay to talk about. She's talked about it before. My younger sister is 1 year younger than me. And I remember the first time she ever shaved her legs. My mom was showing her how to shave her legs in the bathroom. She was like wearing a swimsuit in the bath or whatever. And I didn't know, I had no idea at the time why I did this, but I found a bottle of aftershave. I soaked a washcloth in it, and then I ran into the bathroom and threw it on her leg. And the pain was intense, obviously.
Yeah.
And like at the time, I was like, oh, I'm just pranking my sister or something. Looking back, like that's clearly like a sublimated, like she's becoming a woman, right? Or taking steps on that. I am feeling incredibly, when I was 5 years old, my school portrait, like the photo, I came home with it and scrawled over my face with a pen. Because I already had some feeling like that. So I guess, the themes there would be the messiness of trans identity, which is something we don't really get to delve into as a culture, maybe. And obviously, I'm not trying to say that like being trans implicitly harms the people around you.
Sure,
but any personal journey isn't only the good points.
The process of figuring oneself out doesn't just go from 0 to, oh, I'm done now. Like there is the process of figuring it out, and you only do that through making mistakes or through a conflict. And you are going to like end up lashing out at people who maybe, you don't even realize you're lashing out at, and that's part of the journey. And so, as like Charles, especially, sort of raised to be a fascist, and like having this built in on her journey, not only for self-discovery, but potentially to be a better person than evil fascist overlord, is still there's going to be a lot of pain on that road, There's a like a documented phenomenon of like
pre-transition and coming out trans women getting involved in the armed forces in some way. As an attempt to like masculinize themselves or prove their masculinity. And I think that's an undeniable example of like, yeah, that struggle with gender leads to violence in the world, right?
Yeah.
Directed at other people. Again, not trying to, you got to be so careful. I'm not trying to say that like pre-transition trans women are like more evil than anyone else or something. But yeah, the other themes, there's obviously like conformity versus non-conformity, the way fascism underestimates those that don't conform and are marginalized. There's also maybe the uselessness of power and the limits of the imagination of what to do with it. These children could do so much, right? And they're just destroying. That's all they can conceive of doing. And again, they're supposed to be higher than us, but they have the same petty resentments and prejudices. And all they know is violence. Even the things they create through others' labor are tools of destruction, this awful spire, right?
Well, and I think that fits with like power in general sort of creates an arrested development, right? Like we sort of sometimes see with like artists who would suddenly get like really rich and famous, like Jay-Z now can only rap about how much money he has, or like Dave Chappelle, like who used to make like some sort of like incisive racial commentary, now can only pick on people now that he's like a billionaire or whatever.
Oh yeah, like it's part of the thing, a thing that it seems to be a universal truth. People will do what they can get away with doing. Well, but, and if you have enough power or money or influence or whatever, you feel more comfortable doing more hurtful shit because who's going to stop you until, you know, eventually you have some kind of social reckoning, which...
Well, no, where I'm kind of going with it is like power can stop you from growing. Like it can just halt your growth because there's no reason for you to grow. And so
literally in the children's cases, like their muscle tone is bad because they don't do physical labor.
And they've had the power since they were born. Like they, of course, all they know is violence because like as a kid, all you know is tantrums. Like that's how you react to something. And if your tantrums from the beginning have given you absolutely everything you've ever wanted, why would you bother learning anything else, right? So they're trapped as children, even in their 20s. Their imagination is limited because they've never had to have one.
Yeah,
they've never had to learn.
Never have to learn to compromise except for with each other. But now they're not.
Except for Charles, who has been forced to grow by the nature of her identity and its conflict with her body.
Yes, I really like that.
Okay, I have now totally back in with even like I wonder what like no that actually we talk about how the like David in the movie in the Carpenter movie has this inciting incident that makes him different, that gives him a different sense of empathy with struggle, right? Different sense of experience of hardship, and so this gets to be a similar sort of thing, which does not even require any like external event, right? It's an inner journey. Yeah. And yeah, okay, yeah.
I do find it compelling, the idea of like, these are aliens, why would they care about gender? But also like as a trans woman, it's very weird to occupy the mental space of like, yes, I think gender is fake and irrelevant and stupid and pointless, blah, blah, blah. And also at the same time, something so incredibly important to me.
Yeah,
right. Fundamental to my identity, how I interact with the world, how other people interact with me. So yeah, I can definitely see an argument for being like, these aliens should all transcend their gender, right? But at the same time, like I want there to be a trans woman protagonist.
I mean, but also maybe part of the othering is like the other people could be like, why do you care about this? Like why like they don't even like maybe the other aliens don't understand why gender is important.
Right. And it's impossible to explain, right? It's like I'm talking about like anytime I'm always, obviously I'm sitting here the cis guy, but like, yeah, having to be able to trying to like talk about like, yeah, gender's not that big of a deal, but obviously if someone is like, it's such a difficult and expensive and like dangerous thing to like in our society socially to transition, that no one would do it if it wasn't important to them, right? If it didn't matter. So it's a difficult thing to balance in that. So like, yeah, maybe the idea of it's not something that's that important to them, but except for it's important to her, And like, that's sort of a humanizing thing for them that they don't like, because these are not details we need to break down in the pitch. It's just a fun conversation.
I think it's very funny that we're delving into non-binary versus trans women violence. We're getting very Twitter discourse about it.
Yes.
These 3 aliens are non-binary and they cannot understand why having a binary gender identity would be important to Charles.
Listen, we've assembled the council, right? We've got our cis host, our non-binary host, and our trans guest, and we're doing the discourse right here on the air.
We're doing the discourse.
And no one can get mad at us.
If Avery Edison's there's gonna be discourse, even if she says she's not doing it on purpose. It's happening. All right, so let's do our final act, and then there is a short epilogue. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Title card, 2024. So we're another 10 years ahead. The Midwich child we knew as Charles is waiting on a bench in St. Pancras Station near the Eurostar. She's well into her transition and reads as a woman. Her face is still strange and hard to look at, but the effect has softened, perhaps with age, perhaps with effort and focus. She looks at her watch. Any minute now, brick wall up. A mass of passengers leave from the Eurostar platform, the largest contingent of them led by a thin woman in expensive clothes. She has a strange, uncanny face. It's Dorothy, alive after all this time. She strides confidently past the bench and then stops. The mass of drones with her stops too. Bethany? She asks. No. Charles. Sophie, Sophie replies, rising from the seat. It's Sophie now. I can see that. I saw the news stories. The mysterious, isolated village of Midwich burned to the ground after being taken over by a cult or something. I thought perhaps the locals had gotten the best of you all. Sophie smiles, remembering something. Nobody can stop us, Dorothy, as it seems you're all too aware. The group around Dorothy is larger now, more drones added as people pass by and get caught in her field. I've picked up traces of your mind all over London. There was enough residual information to find you here. You've not been very discreet. Didn't know I had to be, Dorothy responds. Then, looking around, oh God, is my brother with you? Sophie's face is dark. No, none of them are. They died. In the fire. Dorothy relaxes a little, but doesn't let any drones go. She nods towards the exit, and Sophie agrees. They start walking through the station together. As they do, Dorothy adds more and more drones until the entire population of the station is moving as one under her command, following their new leader. He thought you were dead too, by the way. They all did. I kept your secret till the end. We learned that in 2006, Dorothy, sensing that young Sophie was different from the other children, had felt safe revealing to her that during a visit to London, she'd picked up on plans for a terrorist attack. Sophie wanted her to report this knowledge to the authorities, but Dorothy used it to fake her own death. She never cared for Alec's way of doing things, and especially disliked how he treated her mother and father. Sophie repaid Dorothy's trust with secrets of her own, her burgeoning gender identity, and the brick wall. Dorothy still uses it to this day, always worried that one of her siblings might surprise her. And though it's not as strong as Sophie's, it's never had to be, it's strong enough to keep Sophie out. Dorothy has spent nearly 2 decades building an empire. She's secretly in control of most of the major companies in the UK and is making inroads in Europe. She doesn't know exactly what she wants to do, but she wants it to be big. She's held back from influencing politics directly, but she knows it's a possibility, an even more tempting one now that Sophie is here to help. Sophie stops her there. She'll do no such thing. And in fact, Dorothy will massively scale back her operations. She knows as well as Sophie just what it does to people's minds to be intruded and controlled. Sophie's already encountered hundreds of people in the city who are experiencing severe deterioration from repeated psychic assault. Do you want the whole world to end up like Midwich? Sophie asks. I don't know, Dorothy says. I wasn't there. If anything, Midwich is your fault. That hits Sophie like a ton of bricks, but she moves past it. She asks one more time for Dorothy to let all these people go. No, I may not be Alec, but I'm not an idiot either. Our powers make these people a resource. They exist for us to use. Just because you're too stupid to see that. I mean, there are 10,000 people within 500 meters of us right now. Did you know that? And I've spent the past few minutes getting every single one of them under my control. You can't get in my head, and if you so much as touch me, I'll have my people tear you apart. I won't like it, but I will. And then I will keep doing whatever I want to this country, to this city, this country, this world, no matter how many of these cattle's brains I eat up doing it. Now piss off back to the countryside, where I have these people do something I might regret, you stupid, naive little boy. Sophie takes a breath. Wow. You're right. You're right, Dorothy. You're right that I can't psychically get in your head and shut you down. You're right that I can't physically move against you. But you're wrong about one thing. Yeah? What's that, Charles? The 500 meters. I'd actually peg the current body count at 10,001. Dorothy snaps her head back and forth, searching. What? What are you talking about? Sophie smiles. Mr. Griffin? The bus? Before Dorothy can react, an invisible foot boots her off the pavement into oncoming traffic, and she's plowed into by one of London's famous red double-decker buses. Her head cracks the front window as she's knocked forward and then dragged under the wheels. The bus screeches to a halt as everyone in the surrounding area, roughly 500 meters, reels from the psychic blowback of the sudden disconnection. People are confused and disoriented. Can I take this wall thing down now? It's real hard to concentrate. Sophie nods. Sure, Jack. And suddenly we see Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, as a mind like Sophie's does. The faintest hint of luminescent outline around his body, glowing brightest near his head. And thank you. You wait here. I'm going to check on my sister. Sophie kneels down beside Dorothy. One side of her body is completely crushed under the wheel. Her breathing is fast and shallow, but somehow she's still alive. Some residual alien hardiness, perhaps. Invisible Man. That's ridiculous. I know. You taught him, like you taught me. The wall. Smart. How old were you when you came up with that thing? 7, maybe 8? So before then, you were in the group mind with us. Of course. You ever wonder if we messed up each other's brains too? Tommy knocking around in there without realizing. Sophie looks away, disturbed. They're going to linger with you in there. Me too. And all these things they did and I did and you did with us. It doesn't go away just because you change your name and put on a dress. You're as much of a monster as we were, just prettier. She coughs, and it's one of those last coughs. For all her resilience, these are very clearly her final moments. She looks up at the bus on top of her. You don't know what I had planned. Maybe I was going to do some good. And now I'm dying under a bus. It's your... She closes her eyes. Her head falls back. Sophie finishes the thought for her. My fault. Fade to black. Okay, before we get to the post-credit sequence, I'm not fully caught up on the show. I hope Jack Griffin is still invisible.
Jack is still invisible. And in fact, this is a great tee-up because the very next episode after this, I am pitching The Invisible Man's Revenge.
Oh,
so
perfect.
Our Invisible Man sequel is the next episode. So thank you for giving us that perfect tee-up for Jack.
I mean, it's a little bit of a steal because I believe on the show previously you've had the sudden reveal that the Invisible Man has been there the whole time. But I mean, it's just so fun to do.
Yeah. That's what he's there for.
And it's, we've had the tie-in to the Dark Universe at the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. It's fun to bring it back for the end, and also like it's not super necessary. Also, like you can just have it that before Dorothy can do anything, like Sophie just shoves her into the bus, and maybe that's more interesting. Like Dorothy is very like, you can't get in my head. There's nothing you can do, and you've got no people controlling that you can get to hurt me for you. And Sophie can just be like, well, yeah, but we don't need other people to do things for us.
I can just do it. I can just push you.
I really like that at the beginning of the scene. She says, almost here, wall up, and you think maybe she's talking to herself. But,
yeah, I assumed that too.
Yeah, that's a nice double entendre there. And I like, speaking of Dark Universe connections, Sophie's a great character to have knocking around the Dark Universe. A psychic trans woman that's got like Purple Man powers,
Yeah, and we haven't done anyone who's been like,
we don't have any psychics.
We don't have any psychics. We also don't have any. We haven't had any aliens that are textually definitely aliens. Mm-hmm. Like it's been implied that that Indrid is from another planet, but we never go into it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of another layer, another kind of supernatural fun to throw in there. And of course, I always like when there's sci-fi shit. So,
and of course, we love a character with a very traumatized backstory, and Sophie's got that in spades.
She's like, traumatized. She's done evil things, horrifying things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I guess at some point in her time post Midwich, she ran into Jack and maybe saw him when other people couldn't. and they hooked up that way. Yeah.
Right, because you're like, I imagine if you're psychic, whether or not someone's visible to the naked eye is not that important to you. You're going to sense their presence, and so that might actually help for Jack to feel seen by somebody. Which is nice. I like that what we have here. I know you have a coda when we want to get to, but this has that sort of thing which we talked about, just kind of a limitation of the format of our show. Where it's like, the only thing missing here is that we kind of just need, like, we have a lot of things that are happening in a scene that need to be happening over the course of like an act, right? Like,
of course.
I would want to see, like, like Sophie meets up with the sister's name is
Dorothy.
Like, to have like a period of time where like they meet up and then they have to have the kind of measuring each other, and like maybe it looks like they're going to work together, and then this is just the final confrontation, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's so many gaps that are fun to fill in, and like so many possibilities.
Yeah. It's a very fleshed out, but still great skeleton that has a lot of room for development.
Yeah. I want to make a skeleton that has clear points that you can fill out. I mean, initially when I wrote down, I was just like, I'll just write a few lines describing the broad points of each scene. And I was like, no, as soon as you start writing dialogue, it's
see, Dalton,
you wanna flesh it
it's
out.
fucking hard.
Yeah, that's our problem too. Let's get to
that
this coda though.
Yeah.
Let's hit the epilogue.
Okay. It's very, very quick. Okay. Post-credit sequence. Title card. Midwich, Southwest England, 1994. We're back at the UFO site. The rocket is fired at the ship. It explodes. Barbara falls to the ground. And, unnoticed by anyone except injured cold, so does a female Prodigium soldier. We cut to her filling out a report at the Prodigium offices, then suddenly grabbing a wastepaper basket to throw up into. Then her walking down the Prodigium hall, visibly showing. Then an ultrasound appointment. We zoom into the display, to the baby. The birdsong returns. The end.
There's another one.
There's another one out there.
There's another one out there.
Possibly in the control.
Under Prodigium's control. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, you've made it basically impossible for us to not pick up where this left off.
Although we only have 3 movies to the Dark Legion, and Invisible Man's Revenge is almost done. So we'll see if we have room in this phase to pick up any of these threads, but we definitely want to. I think we can unanimously say we'll make this canon.
Canon, yeah.
Let's lock
music
it in.
to my ears.
It's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
But thank you, Avery. I think we've dissected this one pretty thoroughly now. We're going to make it canon. I think this is a great addition to the Dark Universe. I think the fans will be thrilled by your pitch. Thank you for putting so much work into it.
Yeah, thank you so
much thought
for
into it.
Yeah, you really put in like way more time. We talked about this a little bit off the air, but we can't ask guests to put in the amount of work that you put in but we're so grateful that you did. And you've set such a dangerous precedent now.
Look, as you said at the beginning of the episode, you can't pay guests, and in fact, guests have to pay to be on the show. So I really thought I would get my money's worth. Like I should take up as much airtime as possible.
It's not true. That's not true. We're not charging anybody.
And if you do have any enemies that listen to this show, I'm sure you've won them over by now.
100%.
Everyone's pro Avery now. Avery, what do you have to promote? Give us your plugs.
I have recently, very embarrassingly, started trying to make it as a Twitch streamer in 2024. So
hell yeah.
If you like my vibe, if you like video games, particularly Slay the Spire, that's all I'm doing right now. Go to twitch.tv/Avery Edison in British evening time on the weekdays, New York time, like midday-ish, I guess. Hang out. It's a fun vibe. It's usually like around 20 people in there chatting while we play games. Sometimes it can be very funny. I can recite a poem on command if requested. That's always fun. It's a fun vibe. Just twitch.tv/Avery Edison.
And your social handles, because you are, of course, one of a poster extraordinaire. Where can everyone follow you?
Yeah, historically, I've been very good at Twitter. It's twitter.com/aedison. Fresh hot takes, jokes occasionally, and a selfie every day is a project that I'm doing. A very narcissistic one, but a project nonetheless.
And of course, the controversial Letterboxd account.
Always interesting to read, even though I disagree very often. I always check it out. If I see you've reviewed something that I'm watching, I always click through.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Avery. This was wonderful. Everyone else out there, of course, you can find us at patreon.com/Dylan and Dalton. Join the Discord to talk with 100 other trans people about this episode and everything that was gone into. Of course, in 2 weeks, we will have The Invisible Man's Revenge, picking up with Dr. Jack Griffin and seeing what he's been up to. And then we've got a lot more coming at you this year. Follow us on social media at Dark Universe Pod. And until next time,
Stay afraid of the Dark Universe.